My name is Rebecca Hayes. I'm 33 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon. For years, I have worked tirelessly to build my own life, one pastry, one cup of coffee at a time. In the little bakery cafe I opened with my own two hands, the smell of bread rising in the oven, the warm hum of conversation over steaming mugs of coffee. That was my sanctuary. But outside those walls, I was nothing more than a shadow in my own family. They never saw me, never acknowledged the sacrifices I made. And the night of my parents' 35th wedding anniversary proved, once and for all, that I had never truly belonged at their table. The restaurant was beautiful, all glass windows overlooking the lake at sunset. I had driven 4 hours from Portland with a carefully wrapped silver frame, hoping maybe, just maybe, they would appreciate the thought of preserving a new memory inside it. But the moment I walked through the doors, I felt it. That same invisible wall pressing me to the margins. Their eyes were fixed on my sister Julia, her husband, and their son, Ethan. My father's booming voice carried across the table, listing Julia's achievements as though she was the only child worth celebrating. My mother's laughter followed, her eyes gleaming as she added to the story, ensuring everyone understood Julia's perfection. I sat at the corner, turning my glass of water in my hands, as if pretending I wasn't invisible might make it less true. Then came the moment that sliced through me like ice. Ethan, 12 years old and smug beyond his years, approached with a soda in his hand, his eyes locked on mine, cruel in a way that no child should ever be, and with the entire table watching. He raised his chin and shouted, "Mom said, you don't belong here," before tipping the entire cup into my lap. The cold spread through my dress, sticky and sweet, clinging to my skin as if to humiliate me even further. The table erupted with laughter. Not one voice defended me, not my mother, who patted Julia's shoulder as if proud of her son's honesty, not my father, who chuckled and said, "Kids will be kids." Julia sat with her triumphant smile, offering no apology. I dabbed at the stain with a napkin, forcing a faint smile. But inside, I was unraveling, not from the cold soda, but from the truth I could no longer ignore. They had never seen me as part of them. Not once in my 33 years. The drive back to Portland that night felt endless. The city lights blurred into streaks, and I replayed every insult, every forgotten birthday, every time Julia was given what I was denied, the new car for her graduation, the paid vacations, the endless money funneled into her business. While I was the backup plan, the one with the good credit, the one they leaned on when Julia needed help. And the cruelest part, I had signed my name on a loan for her boutique, believing that maybe it would make them finally see me. But all it had done was tighten the chain around my neck. That night, in the quiet of my apartment, with the faint scent of yeast from that morning's baking still lingering in the air, I opened my laptop. My name glared back at me from the loan account. Rebecca Hayes, co-signer. My father's words echoed. "You're doing this for the family. Don't let us down." My hand trembled on the mouse, torn between guilt and fury, and then I clicked. I withdrew my name from the loan. The screen blinked with the confirmation, "Your request has been processed." In that instant, I felt something loosen inside me, as if the rope that had been choking me had finally fallen away. For the first time in years, I could breathe. The next morning, sunlight spilled through my curtains as I sipped coffee on my balcony. And then I heard it. The horn of a tow truck. Across the street, neighbors gathered to whisper as Julia's shiny SUV, barely a year old, was hooked and hauled away. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I simply drank my coffee, calm and steady. By 8 o'clock, there was a pounding at my door. I already knew who it was. Julia stood there, pale and frantic, clutching crumpled loan papers in her hands. "You're destroying this family," she screamed, her voice echoing down the hall. All because of a child's prank. Her words cut like blades, but my silence cut sharper. I stood in the doorway, arms folded, not moving. She begged, threatened, accused. She told me Mom and Dad would never forgive me, that I'd regret this. But for once, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel guilty. I felt steady, calm, as if the ground beneath me had finally stopped shaking. I closed the door on her fury, and the sound of the lock clicking into place was like a full stop at the end of a long, unfinished sentence. For years, I had carried them, sacrificing my own peace for the illusion of family. That morning, as I sat back on my sofa with the hum of the city outside, I realized I owed them nothing. No more money, no more silence, no more pieces of myself to be chipped away. I had set myself free, but deep down, I knew Julia and my parents wouldn't let go so easily. Their golden image was cracking, and they would fight to keep it intact, no matter how much they had to break me to do it. And I was ready to fight back. The days that followed were a storm of ringing phones and flashing notifications. My mother's voice filled my voicemail, wavering between pleading and veiled threats. Rebecca, don't do this. Julia only made a mistake. She's your sister. If you don't reverse this, your father and I will have no choice but to cut you off. As if being cut off from a family that had never accepted me was supposed to frighten me. Julia, on the other hand, bombarded me with texts. One moment she begged, "Please, help me just this once. Ethan needs his school tuition covered." The next, she snapped, "You're pathetic. Do you really think you can live in peace without us? Don't forget, you're nothing without family." I read each message with a strange detachment, saving them like pieces of evidence, knowing that each word revealed who they truly were. But it wasn't Julia's rage that broke something inside me. It was Ethan. One evening, I opened my phone and nearly dropped it. There he was, in a TikTok video, mocking me for the world to see. He stood with a group of friends, pretending to pour soda on himself, laughing, then staring into the camera and saying, "Aunt Rebecca doesn't belong here." Their cackles rang out, cruel and sharp, echoing the humiliation of that anniversary night. My stomach churned. He was 12, but his arrogance was sharpened by years of indulgence. I wanted to scream, but instead I closed the app and sat in silence, hands shaking. The humiliation had become a spectacle. Then came the breaking point. Late one night, after closing my cafe, I walked into the dimly lit parking lot and froze. My old car sat under the streetlight, but its surface was carved with deep scratches from front to back, a jagged web tearing through the paint. My chest tightened as I turned toward the cafe window, only to see the glass shattered into a spiderweb pattern, fragments glittering across the sidewalk. My sanctuary, my life's work, violated. I rushed inside, heart pounding, and pulled up the security footage. The screen revealed everything. 2 boys in hoodies, laughing. One of them was Ethan. He dragged a key across my car, while the other struck my cafe window with a metal club. They recorded it all, their laughter sickeningly joyful. I sat there, trembling, staring at the screen. But for once, I didn't cry. The tears didn't come. Instead, a new fire sparked inside me. Enough. I couldn't stay silent anymore. Not one more time. If they thought I would keep bearing it all in the name of family, they were wrong. I sent the footage immediately to the only relative who had ever truly seen me, my Uncle David, my father's younger brother. He had spent decades as an attorney before retiring, and throughout my life, he had been the rare voice telling me I mattered. His response was calm but firm. "Send me everything, every text, every video, every document. Rebecca, if you let this go, they will destroy you. They will never stop." His words weren't just advice. They were a lifeline. The next morning, David arrived at my cafe with a laptop and a folder of legal forms. We watched the footage frame by frame, Ethan's face visible beneath the hoodie, the timestamp glowing clearly at the bottom of the screen. David's jaw tightened. "This is solid evidence. We're taking it to the police, and we're going to make sure they can't twist this back on you." For the first time in years, I felt like someone was standing beside me, not because of obligation, not because of blood, but because he knew the truth. At the police station, I sat with David by my side as I recounted everything, from the soda poured in my lap, to the mocking TikTok, to the vandalism. Investigator Lee, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, listened without interrupting. When she finished reviewing the footage, she looked at me with steady seriousness. "We'll be opening a case. property damage, harassment, possible charges against a minor. But you need to understand, this isn't just family drama anymore. It's criminal. The words struck me like cold water. For so long, I had told myself it was just the way things were. That family could hurt me, but I still had to endure. Now I heard it plainly. It wasn't family conflict. It was abuse. It was exploitation. It was a crime. In the days that followed, I felt the shift. Calls from Ethan's school confirmed that there had been prior complaints about his behavior. Neighbors who had witnessed the vandalism stepped forward to give statements. And through it all, David worked quietly, preparing a stack of legal documents to cut the last invisible chains tying me to Julia's finances. One by one, I pulled my name from her boutique's lease, shut down the e-commerce accounts she had hidden under my information, and canceled the credit card my parents had pushed me into opening for family emergencies. Each confirmation email that arrived in my inbox was like another chain falling to the floor. For the first time in my life, I wasn't shrinking under their weight. I was fighting back. And as I looked at the footage of Ethan's laughter frozen on my laptop screen, I whispered to myself, no more. The backlash came swiftly, like a tidal wave I had expected but was never fully prepared for. Julia's boutique, once the shining jewel of my parents' pride, collapsed within weeks. A sign that read, "Closed until further notice," hung crooked on the glass door, where only months ago my mother had posed proudly for pictures. Suppliers began pulling out, claiming unpaid invoices. One even called me directly, asking if I had really signed the contracts Julia had sent over. My blood ran cold when I saw the forged documents. My name? My signature clumsily imitated next to Julia's. They had used me again, even after I had broken free. I sent everything to David, who shook his head grimly. This isn't just cruelty, Rebecca. This is fraud. It's impersonation. We'll add it to the case file. They've gone beyond favoritism. They've broken the law. His words were steady, but I could see the anger in his eyes. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone in my fight. I wasn't the weak daughter left out of family photographs. I was someone with evidence, with a voice, with the law on my side. Then came the anonymous message, sliding into my Instagram like a snake. Stay quiet before things get worse. Family is family. Don't meddle. I recognized the tone instantly. Julia's desperate attempt at intimidation. I didn't delete it. I screenshotted it, sent it to David, and saved it. Every threat, every manipulation, they were all part of the same rotten web they had tried to spin around me for years. But this time, the web was breaking apart strand by strand, and they were the ones caught in it. Whispers began to spread in the community. At the church my parents attended every Sunday, where they had always been held up as a model couple, the murmurs grew too loud to ignore. The Carters aren't as perfect as they pretended. They pushed one daughter down to lift the other. I heard the words secondhand from a neighbor who came into my cafe, her voice low but her eyes sympathetic. I only smiled faintly and poured her coffee. I didn't need to add anything. The truth was already speaking loudly on its own. The court date came sooner than I thought it would. My stomach knotted as I walked up the stone steps of the courthouse in Seattle. The heavy wooden doors looming ahead of me. I kept repeating David's words in my head. Tell the truth. Stay calm. Let the law do the rest. Inside the courtroom, I sat on the plaintiff's side with my attorney, while David sat behind me, solid as a wall of quiet strength. Across the aisle sat Julia and her husband, stiff and pale, and behind them, just as I feared, my parents. My mother avoided my eyes, her hands folded tightly in her lap. My father stared straight ahead, his face a mask of stone. They had chosen their side, and it wasn't mine. The evidence played out like a movie reel on the screen. Ethan, laughing as he smashed my cafe window. The forged invoices with my name scrawled across them. Screenshots of Julia and my mother's messages plotting to make me look unstable, to destroy my credibility. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence when Hannah, a former employee of Julia's, testified that she had seen the conversations with her own eyes. Her voice shook, but her words cut through the air. They planned to ruin Rebecca so no one would believe her. When it was my turn to speak, My knees trembled, but my voice did not. I told them about the anniversary dinner, about Ethan's words, about the humiliation of cold soda soaking my dress while my family laughed. I told them about every sacrifice, every ignored birthday, every moment of being used as a tool rather than loved as a daughter. And when I repeated Ethan's cruel line, "Mom said you don't belong here," I glanced at my mother. She lowered her head, silent, refusing to meet my gaze. There was no apology in her, not even then. The defense tried to spin it as nothing more than family squabbling, a child's prank gone too far, financial help misunderstood. But the evidence was undeniable. The judge replayed the footage of vandalism, the screenshots of the plan to smear me, the invoices signed in my name, and finally, she delivered her verdict with a sharp, unwavering voice. "This is not a private family matter. This is unlawful conduct. This court will not excuse exploitation disguised as kinship." The ruling struck like thunder. Julia and her husband were ordered to compensate me $32,000 for damages. Ethan was sentenced to 200 hours of community service and juvenile counseling. The judge's final words rang in the silent courtroom. "Indulging this behavior does not protect family. It destroys it." I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I simply breathed. For the first time in years, I felt the weight lift from my chest. Justice had spoken. And no one, not even my parents, could deny it anymore. As I left the courthouse, the Seattle wind whipped through my hair, carrying with it a chill that felt strangely cleansing. David walked beside me, his hand on my shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "From now on, you don't have to carry their burdens." And for the first time, I believed him. The aftermath was both brutal and liberating. Julia and my parents didn't accept defeat quietly. Within days of the ruling, red spray paint scrawled the word traitor across the sidewall of my cafe. My mailbox was stuffed with scraps of paper scribbled with threats. "You'll regret this. Family never forgives." Once upon a time, those words would have gutted me, left me curled on the floor in tears. Now, I simply photographed them, sent them to the police, and scrubbed the wall clean. I was no longer carrying their poison inside me. Something shifted after that trial, not just in me, but in the way the world saw me. My cafe, once a quiet corner of Portland, became busier than ever. Customers came not only for croissants and coffee, but because they had heard my story. A local newspaper ran an article titled, "The Woman Who Stood Up to Toxic Favoritism." I read it late one night, my chest tightening, tears blurring the words. For years, my voice had been drowned out by mocking laughter and cold indifference. Now it was out in the world, not as a plea, but as proof of resilience. The cafe grew busier by the week. I expanded the menu, hired 2 more employees, and even began hosting baking workshops for local students. I was no longer just surviving. I was building something vibrant, something alive, something that was mine alone. And one quiet afternoon, as I was wiping down tables, I opened a letter from the Portland Small Business Association. I had been named Small Business of the Year. For a long moment, I sat frozen, staring at the words. Then I laughed, a sound of disbelief and release. I had spent so many years chasing scraps of recognition from people who never wanted to see me. And now, strangers were applauding me for what my own family had dismissed as worthless. Meanwhile, news of Julia's downfall spread like wildfire. Her boutique was officially bankrupt, the landlord plastering for lease signs on the windows. Suppliers filed lawsuits over fraudulent contracts. Her husband lost his job, cut off by a company desperate to distance itself from scandal. And my parents, the once proud figures in church, always quick to brag about their perfect family, were shunned. Someone told me that during a Sunday service, when my father stood to speak, the congregation fell into awkward silence. The applause he had once basked in had vanished. Their reputation, the mask they had clung to so tightly, was in ruins. I didn't celebrate their collapse. I didn't revel in their shame. What I felt was something deeper, something quieter. Justice. The balance that had been skewed for so long was finally evening out, and I was standing tall in the center of it, no longer begging to be seen, no longer twisting myself into knots for a place at their table. One rainy evening, I closed up the cafe and lingered at the window, watching the streetlights flicker against wet pavement. My reflection stared back at me. Tired? Yes, but stronger than I had ever known. And then I saw them, my parents, standing silently outside beneath the awning. They didn't knock. They didn't wave. They just stood there, looking in, their faces lined with something I couldn't quite name. Regret, confusion, maybe even longing. For a moment, my chest tightened. The old ache stirred, that desperate wish for a simple apology, a gesture of love, but it passed quickly, like a ripple across still water. I turned away, flipped the switch to darken the cafe, and pulled down the curtain. When I glanced back one last time, they were gone, swallowed by the city night. No words were spoken, no reconciliation staged, just two aging silhouettes, walking away from the daughter they had never truly seen. And in that moment, I felt peace, not triumph, not vengeance, but peace, because I no longer needed their approval. I no longer craved their recognition. I had rewritten my life without them, and no one, not even the blood that bound us, could take that from me. Sometimes people say blood is everything, that you must forgive because family is family. But I've learned the hardest truth. Sometimes blood is the heaviest chain of all. Forgiveness does not mean surrendering to pain again. Sometimes forgiveness is the courage to let go, to stop waiting, and to live free. Now, when I stand in my cafe surrounded by the laughter of customers, the smell of bread and coffee thick in the air, I know what victory really means. It wasn't the court ruling. It wasn't their collapse. Victory was waking each morning unburdened. Victory was carving out a life where I am respected, where I am valued, where I am free to be myself. And as I tell you this, I want you to remember, you, too, have the right to walk away from the people who try to crush your spirit. You have the right to protect your peace, even from your own blood. Strength is not born in silence. It's found the moment you decide you will no longer kneel. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, please subscribe to Vengeance Within for more stories like this. Your support means more than you know.